Welcome to GHSSN High School. Today is a very historic day as this is the first ever soccer-specific episode. And I have a special guest with me here tonight in my good friend Saul Guerrero, a student of the game for us, to help me talk about leagues from all over the world, the World Cup, and obviously we will start with our own high school teams here. And I will let my partner introduce himself.
Thank you, Sean. Well, as my partner here mentioned, my name is Saul Guerrero, and it's a pleasure for me to be here by his side to help with this wonderful show, which hopefully will open some of your eyes to this great sport that is soccer, that is worldwide. It is the greatest. Hopefully some of the themes we speak about as our own personal local games and the European and other leagues around the world that we will speak of will hopefully catch your interest, and you will join us in watching these games during the years. I'll pass the mic back to Sean so we can continue on with the information of our local high school team.
Good job, Saul. Great way to start your career in broadcasting. Although I know you're intent on the faith, but that's fine too. You'll need this type of ability for sure. Well, back to the standings and what we're supposed to do. We're in a three-way tie with Weatherford and Woodward for the opportunity for the district title. It's pretty safe to say we've got the playoffs 99% locked up because Clinton could catch us and get a superior goal difference, but that's only if we lay a severe egg tomorrow. We should be in, and we should have a shot at the district title. We are 3-1 as are Weatherford and Woodward. Our goal difference is 8, and Weatherford's is 9, which pretty much means if we beat Alva by 10 goals, which we should be able to since everybody else has. Sorry, Tessica. It's just the truth. But at any rate, if we win 10-0 over Alva, it pretty much means as long as the Weatherford keeper lets in 9 or less, we're district champions. And the Woodward goalkeeper is probably the all-district goalkeeper. And Giselle's good, but this guy is the only reason Woodward wasn't destroyed by us when we played them. That's just what I'll say. Giselle, you're awesome. I'm afraid to say this guy might be a little bit above your class, but Giselle, you're awesome. Please don't take this in the wrong way. And I'll just leave it at that. I don't want to get myself in trouble. All right, I'll pass the mic to Saul to dig me out of the hole.
Thank you, Sean. Well, good comments. Giselle is a great goalie, but this kid is spectacular. That's all we need to say. And I think Sean made a good point. Pretty much anything that's in question is the district title. We shouldn't worry much about Woodward or Clinton. As long as we defeat Alva, we should be okay. That should be no problem for us. And if we can catch enough goals, we'll have the district title, under our belt. So hopefully we can come out victorious tomorrow, and that should be enough for us to go into the playoffs with, very good aspirations to make a long run and maybe bring that state title home. Right, Sean?
And just so you know, because I don't think I said it, our overall record is 8-3 because of the non-district games, the pre-season scrimmages, and the Bethany tournament. And that's Weatherford's overall record as well from their own tournament in Weatherford. And Woodward's overall record is 5-3. I don't understand how that's possible unless they just didn't go to a tournament. But I think we are ready to move on to the girls, who are going to make history tomorrow one way or another, as Elk City and Clinton obviously play each other, as they're both undefeated in the district, vying for the district title, and we are sitting pretty at third place with 4 wins, 7 losses, and 1 tie for the overall record and district record of 2-3. Alva is the opponent, which is good because they're the only team that can catch us. And for the most part, I hate to say it, but it's the truth again, Tessica. You're pretty much the whole team in Alva. And we should be able to win that game and move on to the playoffs. And for the girls, it would be a historic occasion. They would be on the road being the 3 seed. But with us, the guys, having the bye week, we should be able to go watch. The only thing that could complicate with that is that Coach Taylor informed us that we might have a scrimmage on that date at a last-second kind of thing. But if we do, that's awesome. And if we don't, we'll go support the girls in full force, even if we have to in our own cars, because I know it'd be worth the gas. And I'll let my partner add his comments.
Well, the only thing we can say is our girls are great. For the first time they are competing at a higher level. They have had a great season compared to previous seasons, which, if you've been following it, hasn't been all that great. But this is a really great year, and hopefully we can go out and support them, and they can bring that win. And as Sean mentioned, we have history. Guyman High School girls will make it to the playoffs, which would be very, very great. Great for them, great for us, for the school, for the county. It'd just be very great if they could do this, and they have the talent. They definitely have the experience. They have a lot of seniors that can definitely win. So hopefully they can go out there and win tomorrow.
I also have a lot of lamentations about this because if Tessica hadn't had to move, I could picture these girls being district champs because in our friendly, the Alva boys didn't have their basketball players in yet, and Tessica had to play for the boys in all the friendlies too. And she set up both of the goals against us, and we won 4-2. And Coach Taylor was mad that we didn't beat them worse. So that's just a shout out. Just the amazing individual accomplishments of one of those we have lost. But the girls, it's still a great season, and you'll do well without her and beat her on the pitch tomorrow. That's all I got to say, and we're moving on to Europe.
All right, well, Tessica, you heard what Sean said. Hopefully, maybe out there you're listening, but you're great. Hopefully, whatever happens, well, we know you'll be happy regardless of the result.
Well, she'll hear us all right because we're putting this on Facebook. And she'll probably give me some choice comments tomorrow, but I'll live with that. All right, well, I was erroneous. Actually, we were starting with the MLS on the home front. Sorry, folks, but all right. So far, we have two teams on doing pretty well to start the season, the early runners for the MLS Cup, and it's two of the primo popular franchises, popular markets, which is good for the MLS but bad for everybody that likes to hate the big guys. So basically the energy drinks are on top in the Eastern Conference, New York Red Bulls at 9 points. For the local interest, Kansas City Wizards are in second place at 6 points, and West Texas A&M alumni David Arnault is their new captain for this season, which gives me great hope, as I will probably be a Buffalo next year, barring sights unforeseen. But I was just as sure about OU a month ago, so be forewarned, it could change. I was about to say probably, but I didn't want to diss West Texas like that. I think I'm probably set with them for sure. All right, coming in at third is New England, fourth Columbus, fifth Chicago, Philly Union, the expansion team at 6, and they have a tough reputation to uphold with the Sounders of last year. Toronto FC at 3 points, and DC United, I believe, is the only team that does not have a point yet. Let's check down at the West. No, FC Dallas has 2 points in the West. And the way the playoffs work in the MLS is kind of weird, because the New York Red Bulls ended up being Western Conference champions 2 years ago. So that's how screwed up this is. But as it is, the top 3 teams in each conference automatically make it, and from there it's wild cards. Whoever has most points, regardless of conference. And that's why LA and Real Salt Lake played each other last year, as in Salt Lake was Eastern Conference champions because they had made the wild card spot. And the wild cards do generally do well, surprisingly. So I'm going to turn it over to my partner to do the Western Conference table for you.
Thank you, Sean. On the other side, on the Western table, you have those Los Angeles Galaxy, the Stars there in Hollywood, making a good run at 4-0, undefeated, 12 points. They stand atop the table. Right behind them at number 2 stands Colorado, who's doing very well with 2 wins, a draw, and a loss. And Houston, with the same record, stands at 3rd place with 7 points. Then you have my personal favorite team of the MLS, last year's surprise and expansion team, which I believe this year will make another great run.
They're the first expansion team since the Chicago Fire in '98 to win a trophy in their inaugural season, as the Sounders brought home the Lamar Hunt U.S. Open Cup. And for the national team standpoint, Edson Buttle of the Galaxy is the main reason they're doing so good right now. With at least 5 goals in these 4 games. I think it's 6 or 7. But he's pretty much locked up an opportunity for South Africa, which is crazy because he was never even in the picture before this. And sorry to butt in, but I just had input.
It is all right, Sean. As we were saying, Seattle then stands at fourth place with 7 points as well, 2 wins, a draw, and a loss. Then you have San Jose, who apparently has been going all over the world. If you've heard all those earthquakes, if you know what I'm saying. That's a Sean joke for you people. That's a Sean joke right there.
That's sad and funny at the same time, but mostly sad. We send our regards to Haiti, Chile, Iceland, and China, to all those countries affected. Or Iceland was the volcano, my bad, but to everywhere that's been affected by this strange weather lately. On the faith part, some people think this is the last days. They're probably right, but let's get back to sports.
Well, we all have our opinions there, Sean. Very well. Well, San Jose stands with 6 points with 2 wins and a loss. Then we go down to 6th, 7th, and 8th place. Real Salt Lake, the defending champions, have only 4 points with 1 win, a draw, and 2 losses. And then Chivas USA, for all you Hispanics out there, especially the Mexican people here in the area, Guadalajara fans out there too. Well, they stand with 3 losses, only 1 win, and the win against the rival Los Angeles. It's still a little disappointing for them. And at last place with 2 points, FC Dallas.
What's most ironic to me is that Chivas Guadalajara doesn't use USA as a feeder team more than they do, because I thought that was the whole point. But what was really weird is that they almost played in the Superliga final a couple years ago, and that would have been an amazing sight to see, because you couldn't tell who was rooting for who at all, except for the sounds and all the blowhorns and everything. But that would have been interesting. I'm sure it'll happen someday. If nothing else, they'll have friendlies, I'm sure. And we're moving on to the Premier League, and I will let my partner start off for us. Chelsea on top, 77.
Yes, and right behind Chelsea at 76 is Manchester United.
My favorite team.
I personally very much dislike them. You will see in a sec why. Then we have Arsenal standing in 3rd place with 71 points.
And the main reason to care about 2 and 3 is because United and Arsenal both have American majority owners, which gives future Americans great opportunities. Personally, I'm hoping Landon Donovan can make it to Arsenal, as with how good he did on his loan stint with Everton this year, he could probably be signed. I just don't know whether Wenger would be interested. But with how bad he gave him problems at the Emirates this season, that might happen. United, for your Hispanic interest, signed what's his? Oh, okay, I'll let my partner do that.
Sean, you're getting a little ahead of me. I was gonna say, despite the ownership, both teams have Mexican players in their squads. Manchester United just brought in a young player, which most of you Mexicans might know of, El Chicharito Hernandez, who has just been signed. He's having a great season in Mexico. And Arsenal, of course, all you know, Carlitos Vela, who was a star in that Under-17 World Cup championship team. He hasn't had a lot of playing time lately, but he's still there. He's working for his job, and he's doing a good job. And so, that's a little, bite on the nail for Sean there. But let me turn you back to Sean. He's got a comment.
Well, for the trivia buffs out there, United, even despite their ownership, is in debt, and he's the owner of the Buccaneers, which makes me mad, because if this guy had any sense at all, he would sell the Buccaneers and fix United's finances. But unfortunately, he doesn't have a brain in his head, except maybe. Well, I won't go there. At any rate, it's just exciting times, and Hotspur sits at 4th place in the last Champions League position, but it's not automatic group stage, with 64 points. City at 62 points, Manchester City, that is. Have I missed any players of interest? Is there a Mexican on Hotspur? I thought that for some reason. Okay. The Villa has 2 American goalkeepers, and Brad Friedel, who was our goalkeeper of the 2002 World Cup in Korea. I'll just say that because I don't think we played a Japan match, but it was co-hosted. And our goalkeeper of the future, and Brad Guzan, which has made a lot of us mad because he signed with Villa before Friedel, and Friedel's just took his playing time away. Friedel has really hurt his own nation by being so greedy, in my opinion. He should have came back to the MLS if he really wanted to help, but he's just being greedy. And to give it to you over back to the Liverpool side of things, is both of the next clubs are based in Liverpool, England, and Liverpool is Saul's favorite.
We stand in 7th place, which is very disappointing. Almost 20 years since we've won the title. It's a lot of anger issues here. Hold up, Sean. Let me speak a little. Obviously, we've suffered some injuries, but from second place last year to this, it's very disappointing, especially with your two hated rivals, Manchester United standing second and Everton following our tails at 8th place. It very angers me a little, but what are we going to do? We're still fighting for that last Champions League spot.
And Saul's rooting heavily for Chelsea to hold on to the title because United and Liverpool are at a historic. Well, that's not what I was going to say. They're both tied with 18 titles in England history, which if United were to win this year and make it 4 in a row, they would take the lead as far as most titles in England history. And like Saul said, Liverpool had 18, but they did it early with having not done it at all. Or have they done it in the Premier League format? Okay, not since the Premier League was founded, which was the separation from the Football League, which is kind of a complex deal. I don't know if we want to get into that, but Everton should be a Champions League team, but they choked at the beginning of the year and hit their high point with Donovan's loan. I'm a biased opinion on that, but I thought they were best with him. And then at 9th place we have Birmingham with 47 points. This is where it gets kind of boring because there's no there's no Europe places on the line, and there's no relegation either. So from here, I think we're pretty much going to skip to the teams that have players from the U.S. or Mexico. So Fulham at 10 has Clint Dempsey. He's been awesome, scoring goals. Fulham has made a big run in the Europa League, which is pretty much the NIT for European soccer competition. There's the Champions League, which is the big dance, and they're in the semifinals of the NIT pretty much. Liverpool is as well. We could have an All-England final if they don't get upset. We'll get to those fixtures later in the show. They're both tomorrow, I believe, just like our high school games and the first round of the NFL draft. From here, I just want to mention the other American teams, then you can say whatever you need to wrap up the Premier League, Saul. I believe the only other ones we have is Bolton with, oh crap, my mind went blank. Stuart Holden, except his leg got broke in the Dutch friendly, so he hasn't been able to play. Wolverhampton has our number 3 goalkeeper in Marcus Hanneman. I think he's overtaking Guzan for 2 just because Guzan hasn't got to play with Friedel over top of him. But Hanneman is awesome. He almost got Reading into the Europa League a few years ago before that team fell on the decline and got relegated. West Ham United has Jonathan Spector, our youngest right back. Hull City has Josie Altidore, who is on loan from Villarreal in Spain. And Saul, it's your turn.
I just want to say West Ham United also has a Mexican player, Guillermo Franco. He's actually original from Argentina, but he is nationalized Mexican. He hasn't had a great season. I believe he has 1 goal in his stay. I don't know if our head coach for the national team will have him in mind for the World Cup, but he's been doing all right. But that's all I'd like to mention.
Well, when you're barely surviving, it's not been a good season anyway. But they'll still celebrate with champagne, I'm sure, the day they find out they survive. Because personally, I think if anything, what I would root for, because of the interests we have, I would root for Wigan to fall down and Hull City to take their place. But Hull City is probably as good as relegated, which doesn't anger me as much as you might think because Altidore's on loan. He'll go back to Villarreal at the end of the season, and he'll probably either get a new loan or he might actually finally play in Spain. We'll have to sit and wait on that, but it probably depends on how he does with the national team this summer in the World Cup, because I think his spot's locked up, but I don't think he's guaranteed the starting 11 after Buttle's reemergence and the amazing story of Charlie Davies we'll get to later in the show. And from here, the only thing I'd love to say is with the Premier League is Portsmouth being in the financial crap they're in. Their only bright shining spot is that they're the team that will be slaughtered by Chelsea in the FA Cup final. So, with no further ado, we get to the championship where Newcastle and West Bromwich have already been promoted to the Premier League next season, and the playoff spots look interesting for my partner to talk about.
Yes, pretty much that is settled, but you got 4 spots from 3rd to 6th place. And those 4 teams will fight for the 3rd opening, since 3 teams move up and 3 teams come down. But then you still have a little, you got 7th place and 9th place. They might squeak in there, but most likely they won't. But you got Nottingham Forest, who might surprise you. Once a day were giants in Europe with 2 titles.
Yeah, I believe that's 77 and 78, but don't mark me down on that. It was in the 70s at least before ESPN.
Yes, very true. So you know that. Then you got Cardiff City. I don't know. Leicester City and Swansea City, I believe. I don't know if my pronunciation is correct. Let me pass it on to Sean.
Main history with this is that all these teams are England except Cardiff and Swansea are Wales. And was it 2 years ago or 3 years ago? Cardiff was in the FA Cup final, and if Cardiff had won it, 2 years ago. If Cardiff had won it, they wouldn't have let them have the Europa League place that is supposed to be guaranteed with the FA Cup because they wouldn't be representing England, which seems kind of bogus and double standard. If you're going to let them in at all, let them in full place. And so I'm rooting for something good to happen. Pretty much anybody but Leicester City would please me because we would either have the history of 2 European Cups or the irony of Wales finally cracking into the Premier League. Blackpool, Middlesbrough, and Reading still look like they have a shot with 66 points in Blackpool, 61 from Middlesbrough, who is a Premier League team of quite a history, who got relegated last year. Reading had two darling, was it 2 or 3? They had 2 pretty good years in the Premier League. Yeah, but the rest of the table I don't think is very interesting unless my partner has something to add. The only thing I want to talk about on the championship other than this is Watford and Jay DeMerit, who is personally my favorite U.S. player. And it should be obvious why in a second. Scroll down. The championship is... There you go. Well, he's from Green Bay, Wisconsin. That should be self-explanatory enough for anybody that knows me. But, yeah, I'm a Packers fan. And to see somebody from a football-crazy town make it in professional soccer is amazing. The only thing is that I don't know how loyal he is because he had to go to the University of Illinois Chicago. But you go where you can, I'm sure. Other than that, it's amazing. He needs a new club because his club's on danger of dropping to the 3rd league in England. But I don't know. I think they'll probably stay up at the end of the day, and he's their club captain. So he probably won't jump ship that easily, but he should. And I'll leave it at that. And I'm not sure. I think France is next, but I won't hold myself to that. Okay. So I was pretty interested in France.
France, yes, I like that French league. You got Marseille.
Plus, you've actually had French class, so you'll actually get these pronunciations right.
It's been a while, Sean. I'll do my best. I'm not really certain. It's been some time since I took that class. So Marseille stands on top with 68 points. Then you have the second team, which is AJ. I'll do it in English. Auxerre, if I'm correct. I don't know. Mrs. Quisenberry would correct me later. Lyon stands in 3rd place. Lyon is my personal favorite, and they are in the Champions League here, semifinals as well, which is great. Hopefully, we'll talk about that later, but they stand in 3rd place. They actually had 7 titles in a row. They finally lost it last year, but, reconstruction, and they're doing really well right now.
Wasn't that Marseille last year?
Yes, Marseille, I believe, beat them last year. But, if you win 7 in a row, well, you can slip, and it's not going to really kill you.
How close was that margin?
I don't remember. It was under the double digits. It wasn't there yet. I'm not really sure.
Well, my main interest in the French league is Stade Rennes has our club captain country captain Carlos Bocanegra of the USA. He's starting as their left back primarily. We usually start Bocanegra at left center back, but that could change because left back is always a question mark. And with the emergence of Jay DeMerit, and if Onyewu is healthy, Bocanegra would definitely be left back with DeMerit and Onyewu in the back line. Sochaux has the interesting story of Charlie Davies that I can get to. I considered putting this in my graduation speech, actually, but I don't know if he'll do anything with Sochaux in time for me to mention him. He has had a car wreck, was it September? At the very least, it was the end of the hexagonal, the World Cup qualifying. It was right before the last game, and I believe we had already qualified, but we still wanted to perform well, and first place was on the line. That's what it was. And Honduras was our biggest fans because they needed our help to beat Costa Rica to get in. And make a long story short, we helped them get in by having a 2-2 draw with Costa Rica. But Charlie Davies' car wreck was that night before. I think he broke both legs, bones in his face, pretty much almost everywhere in his body. And they thought he might never play again, might never walk again. And he's gone all the way from that to rehabbing and recovering fast as a youthful individual. I think he's only like 4 or 5 years older than us. And he's gone from that to potentially thriving and starting for us in the World Cup, just like we had hoped he would after his brilliant Confederations Cup run last summer. We might exaggerate on that when we get to the World Cup, but for now, I need to let my partner finish up France before we go to Germany or wherever our next destination is.
Well, I don't have much more to say except, I myself, it's an incredible story of Charlie Davies. A great guy. Hopefully he'll make it back in time. I like to see him play. He's a good player. Then just to say, you got 3 teams also go down in France. Not much more to say. We'll speak a little more about Lyon around the end of the show. But let's move on to the next league, which is the German Bundesliga, and I'll let Sean take over since he's more interested in this than I am.
Are you sure? We've got American players, but we don't have Mexican players in Germany, do we? Except for the one?
That's the only one, so go ahead.
So Stuttgart, right? Okay. Well, Munich is winning, but the Bundesliga is always interesting to me because it's always the closest title race. This year they're down a little bit because usually they have at least like 4 or 5 teams still in it at this point in the season, but it's pretty much between Munich and Schalke now. Munich with 63 points, Schalke with 61 points. But at least the minority races are still interesting too, as we've got several teams hoping for Europe, as Bremen's got the last Champions League spot with 54 points and goal difference to help them. Leverkusen on 54 points, but they're 4 goals behind on goal difference. They're in the Europa League spot. Dortmund's got 53 points in the other Europa League spot, and the Europa League includes all of the cup winners. That's why there isn't a third spot for them, because the only way the 6th team makes it is if one of the top 3 teams wins the German Cup, which I'm not sure who is competitive in that tournament this year. Stuttgart has our Hispanic player of Mexico, so
He's a defender, Osorio. I personally believe he's old. He really shouldn't be playing. But, I'm not the coach of the national team, so it's not my choice to choose. And just one more thing. I think it's interesting that the defending champions, Wolfsburg, are in 8th place. I think they're a good team, but obviously it was just one great year. We'll see what happens with them.
Ironic as it is, Claudio Reyna, our national team captain in 2002, had been one of their players, but left because he said that Wolfsburg's only ambition was to avoid relegation. And then they won the title last year. And I don't like Claudio Reyna, so I thought that was very funny. Well, we come into our first current American at Eintracht Frankfurt, which makes me warm and fuzzy personally, because I've been to Frankfurt, being as I lived in Germany for 3 years, and that was our main air flying port, as we lived in Wetzlar, a small city whose team, if they have one, is probably in like the 8th or 9th division, but that's okay. I can live with that. They're maybe Gaiman-sized or smaller, so I'll live with that. Our second American, did I mention Ricardo Clark? I probably did. I'm sorry. But Ricardo Clark is our Eintracht Frankfurt player. He has been a bench player that has not been used yet, so he's used to be a member of the Houston Dynamo. He may be forced to return to MLS if he can't find playing time. At 12th is the longest name in sports, Borussia Mönchengladbach. I think it's right. Because Keller was their goalkeeper before, so I've had to say it before. But they're on 37 points, pretty safe away from the relegation zone. And Michael Bradley, the head coach of our national team, is Bob Bradley, his father. And he doesn't make the team because he's his son. He makes his team because he is one of our best center midfielders. He's a great possession, a goal creator player to bring up bad memories for you Mexican fans. He scored both goals in the U.S.-Mexico game in Columbus and World Cup qualifying this time. All of you guys have said the second goal was lucky, which it probably was, but the first goal was awesome. Hanover, 96, Steve Trundolo. Our primary right back is in a relegation position, which doesn't disappoint me that much because he probably doesn't have a life after this World Cup for us. So he'll hopefully come back to the MLS after this season, is what I would say. He might spend a year in the German second division with his team just for loyalty, but hopefully the MLS pretty soon. And but the structure for Germany is different, to let you know. The 16th team, 3 teams go down in theory, but the 16th team has an opportunity to stay up if they play their cards right, because they make it where the 3rd team in the second division has to earn it by beating the team that's in that position. And last year, Michael Bradley's team was in that spot, and they beat the third place team of the second division to stay up. So it has some history for us, some history would like to avoid, because we would want all our Americans to be above the relegation zone, and all of you Mexican fans would prefer your Mexican players to be doing well. And this year, aside from Cherundolo, we've been okay. But like I said, he doesn't have a life for the national team beyond this World Cup, most likely. So I'm not that disappointed, and we can move on to, I think Italy's next. Yes, Italy, and I'll turn that over to Saul because he knows a lot more about Italy than I do, and he's an AC Milan fan who is in third place.
Thank you, Sean. Just one more thing. I just think it's interesting that there's been a few teams that have American players that have had Mexican players, because Ricardo Clark plays Frankfurt. We also had a defender, Galindo, but like I was telling Sean earlier, we like to bring our good talent back to Mexico, which I personally don't like. So he's back in Chivas. But anyways, let's continue on the Italian side. For the first time, this is a very good news for me, even though I'm not a fan. AS Roma stands on top of the league, which makes me very happy because 1 point behind them is Inter Milan, which is our hated rival. It's if it's OU, that's Texas. No, wait, it's OSU because it's the same city. So I really don't like them, and they've won it 4 years in a row now, 4 titles in a row. I would not want them to get the 5th. And then we stand at third place with 64 points, AC Milan, and which has an American player, which I think Sean would like to talk about.
Gucci Onyewu is our American player. I think he might finally be breaking into the team because of your injuries and because there's not much left to play for. He had been on Belgium's Standard Liège for forever, and that was a great club for him, but Belgium is not the best league in the world, and Italy's at least in the top 3. So he's got a great opportunity, but he's scuffed it for the most part so far. And he might search for a new club for more playing time, but if he grinds it out and starts for Milan on a regular basis, that's great for the future and to open doors for other Americans to Italy. At 4th place, we have the darling story of the year in Sampdoria, because I believe they were 13th last year. Something like that, but they're pretty much your Cinderella story if you ever get one in European soccer. Hoffenheim is the one we forgot in Germany, but they weren't doing good enough this year for us to talk about them. But they went from the 8th division in Germany to the 1st division in 18 years. Rapid promotions, was it 18 or only 8? 8 sounds ridiculous. I think it was 18. But Juventus, perennial powerhouse, usually is in 7th place at 51. They're shutting down. Palermo at 55 is ahead of them, and Napoli at 52. Oh, Napoli. I better turn it back over to my partner.
Yeah, Sean, I'd like to speak a little here. Yes, Sampdoria has been doing great. They beat AC Milan last weekend, which was terrible. We had a red card and last-minute goal. It makes me very mad, but what are you going to do about it, right? Onyewu was not playing. I would like for him to play. I think defensive-wise, he's a great player. He's got size. He's very strong. I don't know if he will. Hopefully he does. I personally would prefer it. And Juventus, it's disappointing. They were actually at top, number 1, and now they stand in 7th. And so is Fiorentina, a team that's been in Europe the last 2 years. They broke down and they're in 9th place, which it's very surprising to see those teams go down so soon.
Yeah, just another Onyewu note. He was a big star in our Confederations Cup last summer, and I'm pretty confident he'll have a good season next year because he'll learn from this experience. Because it's good to shoot for the stars, but sometimes you got to limit yourself. And he'll probably go to England because that's usually our darling league for Americans. But if he sticks it out at Milan, I'll be happy. And the only other thing about Serie A that I've noticed that we might want to talk about is Lazio is usually a pretty good team, but they're on the borderlines of relegation at 37 points. It's 16th place. 3 teams get relegated from the Serie A as well to the Serie B. About the only thing that's famous about the Serie B is Juventus had the match fixing scandal about 4 years ago. Something like that. It was centered around the last World Cup, and they thought they'd lose all their players because they got relegated to Serie B in the scandal, but their loyal players stayed. They got promoted in only 1 year, and they've been wreaking havoc on the Serie A again. Well, not havoc because Inter's won all the titles, but I think it's time for Scotland unless my partner has some final notes on Italy.
I just tore down Juventus a few minutes ago, and you brought them back up. I don't see them tearing havoc.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Yeah, they've had their troubles for sure.
Just one more thing. At 15th place, Udinese. They have the league leading scorer, Di Natale. He's been doing very well, but he hasn't done much for Italy. We'll see what he does in the World Cup.
The kind of player that'll get poached by a bigger team this a year in transfers, I'm sure.
Exactly. Something like that. We'll see what happens. Okay, let's go to Scotland, which I'll give to Sean.
Okay, Scotland I don't think has any Mexican interest, but for us it's big because we've got Maurice Edu and DeMarcus Beasley on the champions Rangers. Edu has been a perennial player for them for a while. He scored the goal that secured their title last year, I believe. And Beasley's been in and out, but he's actually competing for a World Cup spot again. At the beginning of the Confederations Cup, he had the biggest blunder I think I've ever seen. We were kicking our own corner kick against Brazil the first game before we had started our run because we lost to Italy even though we were ahead of them in the first half, but we had the red card to deal with. And then the Egypt game was what saved our skins. But anyway, back to my point, we were taking our own corner kick. He misses the ball completely. It rolls under his foot. Brazil fast breaks it, or the soccer term is counterattacks it, all the way down the field. And they score an our goal when it was our offensive possession. Glasgow Rangers and Glasgow Celtic are like OU-OSU, like Saul's analogy, same city, Glasgow. It's pretty much the biggest city in the UK outside of England, and they both are pretty big clubs. There's been rumors circulating before that England would let them join the English League because they're a class above the rest in Scotland. I think out of the 90-year history of the Scottish Premier League, only like 17 or less of the titles have gone to anybody not in Glasgow, pretty much these two franchises. And other than that, I can't think of anything else to say about Scotland except Aberdeen is the club where Sir Alex Ferguson, Manchester United manager, started his career, and they're not doing that good at 9th place this year. We've got the Dutch League next if we want to talk about it. I don't... Okay.
PSV Eindhoven is third place with 77 points. It's only a 6-point away from the leaders right now, but all of you know there are two Mexican players, Salcido and wow, I just lost his name. It's another defender. Some of you might remember.
I made the same mistake a few minutes ago with Stuart Holden, so I'll give you a minute to catch your mind, and I'll give you a minute to catch your mind because Eindhoven is Beasley's former club before he went to Rangers, and he still leads Americans in record on Champions League goals scored with Eindhoven. And we're hoping that somebody can get to a Champions League team and break that record. Onyewu is about our only player in Champions League position right now as a defender, and he scores goals from time to time, but nothing to break that kind of record, even though it's only 4 or 5 goals. The Dutch structure has one team in the group stage, a second in qualifying for the Champions League, 3 and 4 in Europa, and 5 through 8 play in a playoff semifinal thing for the last Europa League spot, and I think Saul has some more comments.
Yeah, I remember his name. It was El Massa Rodriguez. He plays with him too. He actually scored a wonderful volley from outside the area. Spectacular goal, very well made. And fourth place team, AC Alkmaar, also has Hector Moreno, who's had his playing time. Both teams, I can see him getting the 3 players into the World Cup squad. But not much more to say. I don't know if you have anything else to say about the Dutch League, Sean. I just think they have the best names in football, though. They have really cool names.
That they do, and about the only thing else I have to say about the Dutch League that I like is they have the relegation playoffs like the Germans do, but to a greater degree because they only relegate one team for sure, and the 16 and the 17 both have an opportunity to defend themselves, which is kind of interesting. It defeats some of the parity, but it gives you something else to watch and sell a lot of tickets to, make a lot of money, and gives the fans of those two teams in particular, but the fans of the whole league, something interesting to follow. And I believe Spain finally is next, kind of the grand finale of Europe. Or no, I have Portugal next, but we could skip to Spain if we want to. Well, we've got an Iberian theme here. About the only thing to say about Portugal is that Benfica is dominating. They're looking for another title. Benfica is Cristiano Ronaldo's club. He emulated as a boy, but the Portugal team he actually played for was Sporting Lisbon in 4th place at 44 points. There aren't any Americans in Portugal, and Saul was shaking my head at me, so I think we can skip on to Spain, I believe, unless I have somebody else in the middle that's non-trivial. Okay, we finally have Spain, where treble winners last year, meaning they won their league, they won their cup in their country, and the Champions League last year in Barcelona. That was uh, gut wrenching. As United was the other team in the final, in the first 10 minutes of that game, you're just thinking Ronaldo's going to destroy this team. He's going to have a hat trick. United's going to be back-to-back European champions for the first time. And then Barcelona scores. The rest is history, and Madrid's got more money than God, and he's no longer at Manchester United.
You know, the Spanish league is just a monopoly of Barcelona and Madrid. You know, they just Barcelona. I just gotta say that was a great game they put up against Manchester United. Sean, let me speak now.
Well, I'm just gonna say it's a good game too. It just didn't go my way.
Yeah, it's true. It did not go your way. Great game, Messi. We need to speak about Messi, Sean.
Well, the
For
main thing about Messi is that Argentinians themselves don't like him because he chokes at the international level. That's his reputation. But he'll do well at the World Cup.
no, he doesn't choke. His coach, Maradona, he doesn't know what he's doing. Great player, terrible coach. He sucks. He did drugs. I'm sorry. If you can't get past the idea that you're one of the greatest players and Messi has to be like you, you know, you're wrong, Maradona. Messi's going to be better than you, but you need to be able to coach the team around him. That's something he's not doing. Messi doesn't choke. Maradona doesn't know how to use that team. That's why Messi can't flourish when he's with Argentina.
The sad thing is that this individual, Maradona, is probably he's the Madonna of soccer, and he's probably the second best player in the world history behind Pele. That's how sad this is. But he's kind of like Argentina's got a favorable group, and they might face Mexico again in the round of 16 potentially. If Mexico finishes second, and well, pretty much we'll get to that formatting later. But for now, my other Spain note is Villarreal, Josie Altidor's parent club, is at 6th place in a Europa League spot. And other than that, I better get it to somebody that can actually pronounce these names.
Yeah, let me speak a little here, Sean. I want some time to speak about Spain. Barcelona stands on top. We didn't mention that, with 84, and Real Madrid stands with 83. Barcelona won the Classic. I think this makes it 2 years in a row now where they win both games, which is incredible. If you remember last year's 6-2 dribbling that they gave on them. Then this year they did real well. Messi scored against him. Ronaldo, he's doing good, but he's been overshadowed by Messi. Wayne Rooney's been great, Sean, but I think he's bumped up his level of play.
Well, Rooney also being hurt and out of form, I think gives the U.S. a great chance having to play England first, because Rooney probably won't be at his best. He's been used as a pack dog all season for United because he's our best player, and pretty much we've been criticized as a one-man team, and unfortunately it's probably true. As a U.S. fan and a United fan, I'm sitting on the fence thinking at one end, United is in trouble if he isn't healthy, but the U.S. is a golden opportunity if he isn't healthy. And I'm hoping United can have some great success next year. They need to get rid of Berbatov. He hasn't performed. The rumor for a while was that Bisman was interested in him for Saul's team, but I don't think that's going anywhere. He needs a smaller club because he did well for Tottenham Hotspur, but the pressures of a true big club has gotten to him. I think Little P is his nickname, right? I think he could have success with United. The only problem is that United, it's real easy to get lost and to fall out of favor real easy. I think Ji-sung Park, the Korean captain, I believe, he's like their legend anyway from the 2002 World Cup where they were 4th place. He's about one of the most interesting United players. And United's pretty much got a face from every continent, all over the globe. They're everywhere. They're the most popular football team in the world, which is why their fans, especially non-Americans, are so mad that they have such a lousy owner. And personally, if I had the money, I would buy Manchester United and do the Green Bay Packers thing, just like Real Madrid does. Is I believe the only European club that does is sell stock in the team and make it a publicly owned franchise. And usually with that, you can't go wrong if you have a good fan base. And I think that's about all I have to say about Spain.
One thing, I don't think Manchester United is the most popular team. I think Real Madrid is the most popular team in the world. I don't personally like them, but I don't see how you could put Manchester on top of them, Sean.
Depends on who's winning the trophies at the time. I'm sure in the treble year we were probably more popular, but unfortunately with the dominance of Latin culture, Saul was probably right. But the Brits will say anything. They like to brag.
Yeah, Sean, but you're not British.
I'm a wannabe Brit that roots for the U.S.
Very funny, Sean. Let's see what else we got here. Just to point out the rest of the teams for the Champions League spot, Valencia stands in third with 59 points, and currently with Niño Torres being hurt, their leading scorer, what's his name? Silva, not Silva, right? It's no, he's from Uruguay and he's with Madrid. But Valencia's leading scorer, Spanish, he'll be having the bulk of the scoring ability there. And then you got fourth place Mallorca, which is another kind of type of Cinderella, a team who was a nobody about a year ago. That's a Sampdoria type team. They're doing very well. Eighth place, a little side note, Deportivo La Coruña. Andres Guardado, who is personally my favorite Mexican player. Great guy, great player. Moves on the left side of the field with back and forth. He's hurt. He'll be out for a month. Hopefully he can be back and get some training in time. He'll be part of the team if he's healthy. Even if he doesn't have the playing time, that man is just too important to our club. He'll be playing for us despite what happens. But hopefully he can get back in time, get some training going on, and we'll see him in that World Cup, which we all know we are just waiting for it. It's coming for us. And I just like to say 17th place is Malaga. I just like that name, Malaga. They're currently out of relegation, but it's real close down there. We'll see what happens with that in Spain. I don't know if Sean has something else to say, but that's all I got to say about Spain.
I don't think we do. We need to move on. And, I got to hand it straight back to Saul, all pretty much because it's the Mexican League. The only thing I have to say is that the thing that disturbed me the most is that before the Everton loan, there were big rumors saying that Donovan would be with the Club America because of the interest for him there, but he would have been just like Cabanas. He would have got shot in the head, so I'm glad he went to Everton instead for his 1 month.
Or in the butt. If you remember, there's another player from America shot in the butt. Could have gone either way.
More for historical irony, straight in the front of his forehead because of the 2002 World Cup, defeating Mexico head-to-head. Donovan had the sealing goal, the second goal. Dang it. Why can I not remember who scored first? You probably do. No, you don't? Well, it was because Donovan was the big photo of the story in the papers. But the quarterfinal in 2002, I'm still mad about a penalty they didn't call on Germany, but I will for the rest of my life until we do win the World Cup. So I just better turn it back over to Saul for the Mexican League.
Okay, let's see. The Clausura tournament is going on. Group 1. Guadalajara stands on top with 31 points. They started great. They have slumped. They even lost to Indios, which, as you all know, they're just terrible. They're currently in 5th place, though, ahead of San Luis, which is surprising. San Luis is such a good team, usually. Sean has a comment.
Well, with these 3 different groups and the 18 teams, how does relegation work? Is that just the bottom team from each group?
Okay, relegation, actually, it's different, Sean, in the Spanish tournament. It's actually in a percentage of winning. Your wins and draws add to your percentage. If you're, let's say, Indios, which is a team that actually just came up, it takes 1 year. You play a Clausura and the Apertura tournaments. You have both tournaments to get enough points and percentage to stay on top. If you don't get enough, you'll be relegated. So it's a percentage game. It's interesting. I don't like it. I wish we would change it. But the thing is, Indios had an alright season last year. They didn't win enough, so they didn't move up a lot in their percentage. And then this year they've been terrible. So they're pretty much relegated. Even though they're not necessarily have to be the last team in the tournament, in the league. But it's the percentage. So over the 2 tournaments, we'll define if they stay or if they leave.
So do I understand this right? You have the biannual, or the 2 tournaments every calendar year, but you only relegate once a calendar year.
Exactly. We only relegate 1 team per calendar year. So Indios they're out pretty much. There's really no hope. Too bad for them. They're a good team. Especially with the city of Juarez. For all of you know, just the violence, the terrible things. It would have been great to have a symbol of hope, but unfortunately the team is going down.
So it's like the Saints in the Katrina year, and then it took the year after that for them to do good. But I completely lost my point. Or no, I found it again. So you only relegate 1 team?
Yeah, just 1 team. That's it, and 1 team comes up. if it were from 1 to 18, it'd be that 18th spot team. But since we divided in group, which is once again, I think Mexico is a lot of nonsense in the way we built to the freaking tournament. I don't like it. We really need to remake it. Maybe a Premier League style would fit better. But yeah, that's all.
The main thing you have going for you that I like is the 2 tournaments per year. I like that format, but it needs to be one table, I think. And other than that, we probably need to get on to Group 2, or unless we haven't fully discussed the playoff opportunities from Group 1.
Okay, just one more thing. I think the only thing good about the groups is the parity. There's a lot of equality every year, and the challenges. Teams are always different in the playoffs. You don't get the same team. And right now, Guadalajara stands in first place. Toluca is second place. They're both secure, and then Atlas is in third. And only the top 2 third places make it in, and there's 3 groups. So, well, one of them will be out. I don't know. Right now, Atlas has 23. Let's see the rest of the groups. We'll see who's better. Monterrey is the defending champions, and they're also the league leaders with 35 points. Morelia is second with 24. America, for all you America lovers, I hate the club. I'm sorry. I don't like you guys. I wish you would all just fly away. But you probably couldn't because you're all chickens. But that's all I got to say about that.
And we finally get to the only American note of the Mexican League with Jose Francisco Torres being 4th place in Group 2 for Pachuca, if I didn't say that. But they had done well enough to win CONCACAF and make it to the Club World Cup the year Manchester United won it, so that's how I learned the most about them. But Jose Francisco Torres grew up in Texas and was considering both the U.S. and Mexico, and the U.S. just wanted him first because we needed him more, and he's been a great player for us. I've been disappointed that he hasn't got to play more for our national team, but he could be important at the World Cup this summer. And other than that, Saul probably has all the comments for this.
Yeah, great player. Disappointing Mexico didn't get him. We knew he was there, and we were just dumb. And the U.S. took him. The kid was there. He said, "I want to play. I want to play." And we never took him. And the U.S. was smart. He said, "All right, let's get him." And now we're regretting having such a great player play for the USA. But well. But what are you gonna do about it?
Just adds to the rivalry.
Yes, the hated rivalry. We love each other, but we hate each other at the same time.
And we have to live with each other.
Yes, we do. We have to live with each other. But that's the group right there. Currently, America. Let me check the third group. Yes, America would not be in the playoffs right now. They would be out of it. But the third group, the leader is UNAM. For all you Pumas fans, if you're listening, Macario, they're currently on top with 28 points.
Superior goal difference.
Yes, a superior goal difference. Because my team, my home team, where I was born, Torreon Coahuila Santos, they stand in second place with 28 points. We've slumped a little. We had a little 8-game undefeated streak, and we kind of let go of that first place spot.
And it's easy for me to help Saul Ridumon because in English it means Saints on the Lake, right?
Yes, Saints on the Lake. And just for all you that know, I also am a New Orleans Saints fan. No coincidence. There's no reason that because I like Santos, I like the Saints. No, nothing to do with each other. But it's a nice little fact for you to know. And then Cruz Azul, who's made it to the last 2 finals, I believe, lost both of them. 24 points, they would be in the playoffs. I most likely think they would be in the final again, just because history tells us in the past that's what they're going to do. But will they win the title? I don't know. They're our version of Liverpool. They just can't win it anymore.
For the MLS analysis, or not eulogy, that's a death. Analogy, that's the word I'm looking for. The New England Revolution made it to like 3 or 4 MLS Cups in a row and couldn't win any of them. They're like the Buffalo Bills for the NFL analogy, and I guess Cruz Azul is kind of the same thing here. And I think we're finally ready for the Champions League, unless there's a note I'm missing.
No, Sean, everything's good there. So right now, just to sum it up, teams in the playoffs are Guadalajara, Toluca, Atlas, Monterrey, Morelia. America would be out right now at the moment. UNAM and Santos and Cruz Azul are the teams that would be playing for that title.
How many games are left? Because it can't be too many with the World Cup.
1 game, actually. It's just 1 game left.
Really? I'm surprised. Okay, so it's 17 in both tournaments?
18 teams with 17 played, obviously, because that's how it works. And I believe they're switching to 20 sometime in the next 3-4 years. I'm not sure. It's just a rumor, but it would be a smart idea.
Hopefully you'll get the format you want, because you can't have 3 even groups with 20 teams, unless they add a 21st.
Maybe they'll have 4 groups of 5. You know, the way Mexico is, it never makes sense what they do.
Well, good point. And we finally make it to the champions. Yeah. That'd make it more like the World Cup, but we finally get to the Champions League, where Saul's prime rival Internacional has beaten defending champions Barcelona in the first leg, which means you play a game at home or the road, and then you go on the road or at home. With the ashes from the volcano in Iceland, everybody had to travel by either bus or train for the first time since like the 70s, and no flying at all in Europe. So it's kind of weird. That probably affected the road teams. They wouldn't want to admit it, but it's probably true. That's probably why the results are what they are. So if Barcelona can't rebound at home, they'll blame Iceland. That'll be the legacy of all this. Munich won 1-0 at home against Lyon, despite having Ribéry, the best, well, maybe not the best French player, but the French player that gets most press. Patrice Evra is my favorite French player from United, but that's just because he's from United. I don't know if he's really deserving of that title in my mind. But anyway, Lyon Saul's a French team also, and the first French team in a long time to make the semifinals is losing, but only by 1 before they go back home. The second leg for Lyon and Bayern are the 27th Tuesday, while we're at school pretty much. The Champions League is always about 1 p.m. in the afternoon too. And Wednesday the 28th is Barcelona at home at the Camp Nou, or is that new, or am I pronouncing it anywhere near right? New Camp. It's also the site of the famous 1999 Champions League final, where Manchester United was down 1-0 in stoppage time and had 2 Beckham corner kicks landing at the feet of Teddy Sheringham and Ole Gunnar Solskjaer to win over Bayern Munich, who got sweet revenge this time, knocking us out of the tournament. And unless Saul has comments, we're ready for the Europa League.
I think we can expand a little here, Sean. I'd like to discuss a little more with the Champions League. I think it's the big deal here. Yeah, I knew you would. Internacional, I hate them. I hope they lose. Yes, I think the whole bus trip affects what happened. Barcelona will definitely be better at home. They're too good of a team, Sean. I believe personally that a 3-1 with a one-way goal, I think they can easily go home and win it 2-0.
Probably so, and very likely with the theme of this year, both from Messi's feet. But with the bullet trains they have, it was probably train. The only reason it might not be is because the Orient Express ended its run last year out of lack of popularity. The Orient Express's main claim to fame is Agatha Christie's book, Murder on the Orient Express. She is my author for the research paper in English 4, but back to soccer, I think Saul probably has more to say in the Champions League.
It's just usual Sean putting out facts about things most of us don't know about. But it's fine. We all love him for that. Yeah, so Barcelona will play at home, and Messi, I mean, he scored 4 goals in the last. He's the 6th player to do it. Yeah, just so you know, Sean, the last 5 players who have done it, Ruud van Nistelrooy while at Manchester, Marco van Basten when he was with Milan, Shevchenko, Milan player as well, and
What's his current club?
he's in Ukraine. He's at the end of his career, Dynamo Kyiv, end of his career. So that's 3 players. I don't remember the other 2. I knew one of them also played for Milan, but I don't remember who it was. No, Cantona did not do it. I'm really not sure. There was one guy from Argentina who did it, who played for. No, he played for like Deportivo La Coruña. It was one weird year in Champions League that he did it, but I don't remember them. But just so you know, most of them have been, Milan players. We can talk now about the other semifinal, Sean.
What I was going to say is, what stage in the tournament is this from? Because I think Nistelrooy's was against Glasgow Celtic, which in the group stage was just pretty pathetic, because even though Celtic and Rangers get the berths for Scotland, Scotland's pathetic as far as it comes to the Champions League. It would take either a miracle or actually having the 11 best players in the Scottish Premier League competing for them to have any shot at all.
They have one. I think Celtics have one now.
Well, they won the European Cup in the 60s, but they haven't been competitive recently.
Good point. Yeah, so that's just one point. So for all that you know, Messi is just how do you stop a man like that? You can't. Player of the year, we'll know in the World Cup.
Well, one of the big running jokes over on Fox Football Phone In on a Fox Soccer channel is that Bornstein did stop him in the Copa America when the U.S. was a guest team in that tournament, and I was pretty mad about that at the time because that was during 2007 and the Gold Cup. We had sent our best team to the Gold Cup because the Confederations Cup was on the line, and obviously with what we did in that tournament last year, it was the right decision. But we sent a B team to the Copa America and got slaughtered by Argentina, Venezuela, and Uruguay, I think, was our group, and we got last place. But if that ever happens to us again, we need to field better players, and hopefully we'll have the depth to do so, because eventually we need to be at the point where we can field two or three different starting 11s with 33 players or so and not lose any quality. That's the ultimate goal, aside from winning the World Cup, because that's what shows that you've really arrived.
And just one thing, I mean, that was 2 years ago, Sean. This is Messi's time. This is his peak of his career.
He was still growing for sure.
Yeah, the kid was like 20. He's like 23 right now, and that age to dominate football is spectacular. He's won double the trophies Maradona won when he was his age.
Well, it's not like Bornstein's a dominating player either. He's just stuck at Chivas USA. The running joke at the time was because the guy on that show was a Chelsea supporter, and Chelsea had a Barcelona and Champions League, and it's all like, we need to sign Bornstein just for this one game to dominate this guy.
Yeah, good point, Sean. Well, that's the thing. Personally, result, I think 3-0 Barcelona, 2 Messi goals for the second leg. Sean?
I'll agree with that, and I'll start off the next leg by saying I think Lyon will win 2-1 at home and either lose on away goals or get another goal to win. It's kind of iffy. I don't like the away goals rule, but it's sort of fair but mostly unfair. So back to Seoul.
Yeah, I agree. It makes it interesting, but it's for the most part it can be unfair. I think the game will be a 1-0 win for Lyon. I'm gonna say Bastos will score the goal and penalties. I think they'll take it out in penalties and defeat Bayern Munich, especially because Frank Ribéry will be absent.
Munich does have the Champions League pedigree that would make them popular for people to want them to win. Right. Lyon's the underdog, but they have the quality to do it. Benzema, in particular, one of Madrid's big money signings, left 1 year too early because he didn't think Lyon would have any shot, and Lyon beat them head to head in the Champions League for sweet revenge on their former favorite son, the Brett Favre of France. And so, well, except he's not old; he's a young kid. But yeah, it's always interesting. But the most people would want Munich Barcelona. We are rooting for Lyon Barcelona, and whoever makes it, it'll be a great match. Munich's Champions League history includes a game that was decided on penalty kicks. I think it was Juve, but I could be wrong. The penalty kicks went so far down that Oliver Kahn, famous German goalkeeper, had to take one of the goalkeepers. I think they went through the order almost completely twice on penalty kicks. So that was an epic Champions League final. I don't understand why I can't remember the other team, but Munich won. That's why I remember them.
Yeah, good point, Sean. Anything else to say about this? The only thing I gotta say, Sean, was for all you that like basketball, Lyon is the Butler version. So let's hope they can win it. I personally was going for Duke, but hopefully. Barcelona, who in this case I don't know what they would be Duke. I'm guessing, and Lyon is Butler, but we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I was definitely Butler on that, and I did a very terrible show about that. That wasn't very excited. It was pretty much just to meet my deadline that week, and you never want to do that in this business. We've got to be better, and I think this has been a good show tonight. Personally, we're getting close to the finish line. So, but to the basketball itself, if I can spin off to that for a split second. I don't think the Duke player missed that free throw on purpose, even though everybody says he does. I think he just choked and got lucky that the buzzer beater didn't go in, because if that buzzer beater goes in, we watch that clip for the next 50 years, every March Madness, at least 50 times a day on the commercials. It would have been awesome. And now we're at the Europa League, where Quentin Dempsey and Fulham have a golden opportunity to make their mark. They used to be They're the Hoffenheim of England because they used to be an obscurity in like the third division. They got promoted about the same time the Towers fell in 2001. I think that was their first season. in the Premier League. Dempsey signed with them after that string of the New England Revolution being the Buffalo Bills. He was part of those Revolution teams before he got signed by Fulham. Fulham used to be noted as Full America because they had 5 American players at one point, but now Dempsey is the only one except Eddie Johnson. Fulham's his parent club, but he's at Aris in Greece. And Saul wants to talk about Liverpool against Atletico Madrid. Fulham's opponent is Hamburg SV of Germany.
Right, Sean. Just one more thing about we should have been done this game for basketball too. I agree. I don't think you missed it, but if you look back at that game, that one screen that the Butler player set on the Duke guy, I rewinded that like 20 times. It was a great screen. He just knocked him out. It should have been a foul. It was a good thing it wasn't called because it's perfect. You shouldn't call it. But it was just great watching him get laid out.
I would have rewinded that 20 times as well, but I don't have a DVR yet. My family needs to get in the 21st century on the satellite TV technology. I'm not saying DirecTV just because we've been loyal Dish customers, but personally I'm thinking DirecTV right now just because I'm annoyed at not having Sunday Ticket. But it's probably pretty expensive, so somebody out there that has Sunday Ticket, email me and give me the specifics, please. I need the information, and it'll probably be enough money for me to say I'll just try to find a place that has the NFL on TV, a local place that's probably got a pool table and people that are drunk, and I don't need to drink.
Yeah, Sean, I don't think we need to speak about alcoholic beverages here. Anyways, going back to the point, yeah, that was a great final. That Butler shot would have gone in, would have been great, but I'm glad it didn't. I was going for Duke. I know a lot of people hate Duke, but yeah, I was going for Duke anyways. Okay, getting back to this thing, Atletico Madrid and Liverpool, they have some history, with Nino Torres going from Madrid to Liverpool and Maxi Rodriguez, which I personally dislike him so much because of that 2006 World Cup. Also came to Liverpool, which makes me mad. You never want a player that you hate on your favorite team. You don't want that to happen.
He's the Argentinian player that scored you out of the World Cup, right? For a split second, I was thinking he was your Claudio Reyna, though. I remembered, no, he was the Argentine player. I don't know if you have an analogy for that, except for the fact that you don't like Marquez.
Actually, the only analogy would be a Sean one. It's like little P, Chicharito, going to Manchester United. He's like, same with me. I don't want him at Liverpool. Maxi Rodriguez, I know you won't listen to this, but please leave as soon as you can. I don't like you very much. Neither does Mexico. We don't like you at all. Don't come to our country.
Why would you want him at United either? Your prime rivals, just so you can beat them head to head?
Yeah, anywhere that's not Liverpool. Just don't go to Liverpool or Milan. Stay out of there. Or Lyon, please.
Personally, he should go to Everton just to be out of our hair. And so Howard can beat him up personally and knock him out of the Mexico squad. But Howard's too nice a guy to do that. He's a great man, a Christian, and he's also our number one goalkeeper. He's going to be we're going to live and die by Tim Howard because on his best days, he's one of the top 5 keepers in the world. If he's having a bad day, I don't think we can compete with England.
True, I gotta agree. Tim Howard is great, but if he's not in his moment, he can be bad. But if he's great, the U.S. has a good shot at doing big things.
I'm pretty bitter about Howard's opportunities because he had been the Manchester United number 1 keeper for a couple of years. I got his jersey and everything, and I thought we had arrived because we had a keeper capable of that, but that we weren't winning trophies at the time, and they replaced him with Edwin van der Sar, who has been probably one of the top 3 goalies in Manchester United history behind Schmeichel. But I can't think of the other one right now because Barthez is not good at all. The only reason we signed him was because he was the winning goalkeeper from the '98 World Cup with France, and he was just a risky little strange guy. He would want to dribble with the ball out of the box, and he'd get tackled and have a gimme goal. He was a weird dude. He's on like Azure, I think, in the French league now.
Interesting. I did not know that. We had a player who would do the same thing, Sean, but he was actually really good, Jorge Campos. He actually scored 100 goals in his career. He split his career as a goalie and as a striker, but the guy was great.
That's some great versatility to make you great for your team. About the only goalkeeper I know of that's legendary that for his type of success in that realm is Chilavert, but he was only free kicks. I don't think he ever came up with other than that. Oh, penalty kicks. But Chilavert, which South American team was he? Chile. Ecuador. We'll guess the right one eventually. Paraguay's sticking out in my mind for some reason. But at any rate, if we're going to talk about the World Cup, we need to be getting to it because we're getting to our time limit. We've got fixtures for this week listed on our schedule, but you can look these up easy enough on ESPNSoccerNet.com. The live scores for anywhere in the world are available at any time, and Saturday is pretty much the prime date for European soccer. It's hard to say about anything else, but there's generally somebody playing in the world every day, pretty much, and we're getting to Group A in the World Cup. I think we'll probably do the quick roundup with just the North American teams, with Group A in Mexico, Group C USA, and Group H Honduras. And probably wrap this up. I'll let Saul talk about his own national team.
Thank you, Sean. Yes, we have Group A, South Africa, Mexico. So the host. We open the tournament with the host, which is a great pleasure. It'll be the third time that we do it. Uruguay and France. What do I think? South Africa. History says the host always goes, but I'm sorry. History's gonna change. I'm gonna say we finish first place, personal choice, and France right behind us in second place for the Group A. We have a good team. We'll see what happens. As long as we'll make it to the second round, but we have never made it to the quarterfinals in so long.
Outside of your own country.
Yeah, outside of our own country, which hopefully we can do it. I'm a little angered personally, just for all of you who don't know this. I'm going to New York the week before, and the opening day is when I'm coming back, so I'll be on a bus. So unless we have those little, with technology these days, with phones and live TV and ESPN3.com, hopefully we'll be able to watch the game while on the road. But I don't know. But hopefully, we win and I can get home and have good news.
Why would you be put through that? This is just unconventional. But you had the whole Houston trip last week. So, moving on to the USA in Group C. The U.S. has the best draw they have ever gotten in history, but even to say that, they have to play England in the first game. And there is some history here. It'll be the 60th anniversary of the upset of all time, the so-called miracle match, where the U.S. beat England 1-0 in Brazil 1950. But the irony of that is that we didn't win another game in that tournament, and the player that scored the goal was an illegal citizen, Joseph Gattens, who got deported back to Haiti, I believe. Just because we didn't appreciate the game enough back then, and he wouldn't have got to play for us now. But I think he would have, if he lived today, he would have been naturalized. I'm pretty sure. But back to the point, with us in England, we beat Spain, the number one team in the world, at the Confederations Cup last summer. That was our big shining moment. 2 goals, I believe. One was Altidore, one was Dempsey. I could be wrong, and that was just flat out amazing. I thought we were going to beat Brazil after that, but Brazil is Brazil. We had a 2-0 lead at them on halftime, and Brazilian quality beat us in the second half 3-2. But we got our first ever silver medals at a FIFA tournament. Before that, we've gotten third place at the original World Cup, which Saul always dogs on me saying it's Italian American immigrants, and I say, even if that's true, it's okay. We're a country of immigration. And
Illegal immigrants.
Oh, don't bring that up. I'll have to call the police. I'm sorry, man. I'm sorry. Okay, if it's my fault, I'll have to help you get back to the country of myself.
No, don't worry about it, Sean. It does not anger me at all. It's a good joke. It's a good joke.
Well, if the drug war is in your country, I would feel guilty, especially if, well, yeah. Okay. Well, the other 2 teams in our group are Algeria. Unfortunately, because South Africa, the host in the first group, we play them on the last day, and if we're still in the bubble, South Africa will already be behind them because they will be eliminated, because, frankly, their odds of getting out of the group are the same as them dying on a plane crash in between games. And we said that about Ghana in the last World Cup, and they made it through in the USA group, so don't count them out because they're the host, but count them out because they don't have the team. And Slovenia is the other team in our group. European minority team, used to be part of Yugoslavia, and Yugoslavian teams always compete well, but I don't think they have the quality to compete with us. I say that England has too many problems. Wayne Rooney's fitness will hold them back. Beckham having the torn Achilles tendon. John Terry's well, we'll say personal life for Mrs. Bainey, but your head can go straight to the gutter and figure out what happened. Oh, Wayne Bridge, yeah, their primary left back was the guy was cheated on in that scandal, and he's not going to play for their team anymore. And unfortunately, the U.S. has their own dirt and history as well, finding out that John Harkes could not play in the '98 World Cup because he was with Ronaldo's wife. So that's our own baggage in the past. France '98 was not a good tournament for the U.S. 2002 showed the world we have arrived. '06 was a letdown, and 2018 might be the World Cup where we can make the semifinals and get medals. But I don't know, quarterfinals or round of 16 might be our limit, because if we don't upset England, we get stuck with Germany. And I would love that, in that if we beat them, it would be sweet revenge from 8 years ago. But if we lose, I'll be as disappointed as Saul was 4 years ago. And I think it's time to move on to Honduras in Group H, who has Spain as the main team, who will win that group, barring any ridiculousness, because pretty much all of 23 of Spain's players would play for pretty much every other team. I think it's safe to say. Switzerland, Honduras, and Chile, all those teams, I would say, are pretty equal. So it'll be an interesting group to watch. Being as I vacationed in Switzerland during the time I was in Germany, if Honduras can't do it, I'm rooting for them. Chile is an interesting team as well. With the earthquakes, the world will be rooting for them. Personally, I want Honduras to represent CONCACAF well and make it to the next round, and I'm sure Saul has comments.
I agree. I mean, Switzerland, I think it's a nice country. Just for all that you people that don't know, there's something about. Remember the tax things we learned in history?
Yeah. If you want to live overseas and you don't want to pay taxes, Switzerland has the lowest tax rate in the world. Personally, I'm considering that myself, but I don't think I would like it that much. I would probably. Well, not only that, but I don't know anybody there. It'd get lonely unless Facebook crashed.
And the language barrier. But yeah, definitely, Chile would be a good team to root for because of the havoc there. But, same thing, CONCACAF. It's like for all you people in the area, Big 12, you don't like the team, but who are you going to go for? You go for the conference team. So, yeah, over the SEC, which we... Yeah, we don't like the SEC.
Pretty much popular favor says the South American team will win this year, because no Europe team has won it outside of Europe, and no South American team has won it in Europe. So the South American teams are heavy favorites this year. Spain is the main exception to that rule. So Argentina and Brazil are the teams that people are betting real money on. But unless Messi can bring his total self to the World Cup, I don't think it's there for them. And Brazil is kind of down, but honestly, they're Brazil. But Argentina almost didn't qualify. That's what I want to mention, is that they were 4th place in South American qualifying. If they'd finished 5th, they would have played Costa Rica for the last North America, South America spot. And if Costa Rica had beaten them, we'd all be kicking and screaming, thinking it was the greatest thing in the world.
I personally don't like Argentina at all. But I just want to, once again, Sean, it's not Messi. Messi will bring us A game. The team has to bring their A game around them. It's a great team. They just got to bring their A game. One more thing before we finish or wrap up, and so I can give it back to Sean. We'll see what Honduras does. My personal pick to win it, Spain. On paper, they look great. I would really like the Dutch to take it, though. That's what I believe, and hopefully Mexico can make it to the quarterfinals. That'd be great.
Dutch are my favorite team to win it if the U.S. can't be a Cinderella story, but the U.S. has the team to do it, but I think we have too much controversy of our own to make it very far in the groups in the next round. The only problem is, I would say, with us, our chances at the next World Cup, is that it's in Brazil, and if Brazil doesn't win in Brazil, that'll be the biggest story ever, and their coach will get axed. Hopefully not literally, but people would want him to be. And the main thing is that Africa's a publicized best team, Ivory Coast, is in the group of death with Brazil and Portugal. So out of those 3 teams, only 2 can make it, and that means Cristiano Ronaldo at Portugal and Brazil are probably through to set up an Iberian matchup in the second round between Spain and Portugal. Iberian in that's the peninsula both of those countries are on. But Ivory Coast could surprise them. And North Korea and Kim Jong-il and all that stuff for North Korea hopefully finishes last in that group, because everybody will be rooting against them with their political situation, but we'll be sympathetic to their players. And I wouldn't be surprised if all of their players scattered and did the Cuba thing, trying to get out of their own country. And if that happens, it'd be very sad to see if they had to forfeit games because they lost all their players scattering.
Yeah, that would be sad. I don't know if it would happen, but we'll see what happens with North Korea. But yeah, Brazil, Portugal is probably the favorites for Group G.
And if it affected who got out of the group between the other three teams, the whole nation would have their collective middle finger at Kim Jong-il.
Most likely, most likely. Well, Sean, I believe we're going to wrap this up, right?
About all I have to say is that the World Cup is June 11th through July 11th, and the ball has 11 colors on it because of the South African 11 tribes, 11 ethnic groups. And Mexico plays on the first day, opening match. The U.S. on the second day at 1:30 in prime time. I think Mexico is in that 1:30 or 7:30. All right, Saul's not certain, but we can give that to you on our true World Cup preview where we will break down every group and every team, every bracket. Until then, if you want in-depth analysis, ESPN the magazine has a World Cup special preview edition, and I think we need to get Saul home because it's getting late. But the main advantage for the U.S. with the Confederations Cup and all that is that every venue they have in the first round they played in last summer, so they shouldn't have any uneasiness feelings about where they are. And it's been a long, wonderful show at 80 minutes, and we need to say goodnight to Guyman High School and have a great day, GHS, and please follow us, the soccer teams. I know you can't probably travel to Alva, but be psyched up, wait for news, and be prepared to support us at home playoff games. The girls will be on the road most likely, but who knows? Maybe they could earn it in the second round if there's some upsets accordingly. I don't think they can because they're the three, but if they were to actually make the semifinals are all neutral sites, so everybody's traveling anyway. So to turn it over to Saul's last thoughts, and he might give it back to me, and then we're done for the night.
Yes, I'll give it back, Sean. Just one more thing, While I'll be in New York, I might miss the game, but the question is, as the world watches, will you? You better be, America, because it's the greatest sporting event in the world. I hope you'll be watching. Tigers, you guys can do it. Our boys will definitely do it. And our girls, you guys can make history. And all I got to say is, good night.
Definitely, man. The U.S., especially if we personally are doing well, you have to watch. This is great stuff. If you think the Olympics is great, the World Cup is like the Olympics on steroids. So it's amazing. Tigers were doing great, and we also have had the great news today that they messed up on the dates. State is no longer in conflict with the prom, but really it is because it's Saturday after Friday, so pretty much soccer can't go to after prom, and pretty much the coaches won't want us to have a good time on Friday night. But they probably can't say we can't go, but they'll try to. Knowing Coach Taylor and Coach Davis, but we love them. They're our coaches. They're great leaders, and we wouldn't be where we are without them. And good night, Guyman High School, and thank you for listening. If you have actually listened to the whole 80 minutes of this broadcast, you are a trooper. We love you, and thank you very much. Good night, Guyman High School.
Good night.